I welcome you to today's webinar called Clinical Trials, What You Need to Know. The webinar today is unique in three ways. First, both the secretaries of the organizing team today have the same name, that is Renuka. The second unique feature is that we are holding this webinar on a very, very significant day, which is the International Clinical Trial Day today. And third, we are doing this webinar as a part of the World MS Day global theme Connections. And you will have the pleasure of connecting with eminent doctors, researchers who have been experts in that field. A little about MSSI. MSSI is a 35-year-old organization having 8 offices across India. We are present in Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi, Hyderabad, Indore, Kolkata, Mumbai, Pune, and we also have a support group in Trivandrum currently. The organization basically provides various kinds of services to its registered members, which include counseling, home nursing care, physiotherapy, scholarship to the children of families who have or people who have been afflicted with MS. We also conduct workshops and seminars, which could be medical and otherwise. We also look at providing livelihood opportunities to our registered members, and we also do off and on recreational activities for good mental health. Ever since the lockdown, we have been digitally connecting with most of our members, and it doesn't stop there. We are also actively reaching out to the other stakeholders, one of them being the ISCR, and Renuka and Dr. Dennis Xavier will tell us a little bit more as we go along about that. And so it's an action-packed next 2 hours. I can safely say that we at MSSI, both at the national as well as the chapter level, have been constantly looking for opportunities within this huge adversity brought on by the COVID pandemic that just doesn't seem to go away. How we connect with them is by providing relevant and critical information. We are doing webinars, and we try and stay connected through the limited way of providing services, maintaining the COVID protocol and the guidelines. So without much delay, I would like to introduce you to our first speaker, Dr. Kameshwarprasad. Of course, he doesn't need, and none of the speakers today need any introduction to all the people who know about research, but for those who are joining us for the first time, I must be able to bring what these eminent speakers and what's their background. So Dr. Kameshwarprasad, first and foremost, is on the board of the Medical and Scientific Advisory Committee of Multiple Sclerosis Society. He's also on the board of the International Medical and Scientific Advisory Committee of MS International Federation in UK. Currently, Dr. Kameshwarprasad is the director of the Rajendra Institute of Medical Sciences at Ranchi in the state of Jharkhand. He is an eminent neurologist, medical researcher, and academic, and was the former head of Department of Neurology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences here in Delhi. Of course, Dr. Kameshwarprasad is a proponent of evidence-based medicine and evidence-based healthcare. The government of India in 1991 conferred upon him the Padma Shri, which is one of the civilian awards given for exemplary work done. So it's absolutely amazing and lovely to have you here with us, Dr. Prasad. So now I hand over to you. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Ms. Renuka Malekar, and thank you, Renuka from Indian Society for Clinical Research. It's a great privilege and honor to speak to your members. I have done that earlier as well, but this is a very unique day because this is also the International Day for Clinical Trials, and I think there can't be any better opportunity than this to educate people about why we need clinical trials and all that they need to know about clinical trials. So thank you for inviting me to this unique meeting, and I'm pleased to share this with Dr. Dennis Xavier and Dr. Ansur Abidi. In the beginning, I did not emphasize that COVID-19 has also repeatedly reminded us why clinical trials are necessary. So all those who are following this, they will remember one of the things very early in the course of the pandemic, President Trump had announced is that they have got the answer to pandemic. Hydroxychloroquine is the drug which is going to prevent as well as cure COVID-19, and he imported, so many countries imported from India because India has a lot of stock and manufacturing capacity, and people started taking it. In fact, President Trump said himself that I have started taking hydroxychloroquine. And as you know, this became very popular. And I should tell you my anecdote also, that my daughter became positive for COVID-19, and we all got very anxious. So I told her, in those days, why don't you take hydroxychloroquine? So she refused to take because she believes in evidence more than perhaps I do. She said there is no evidence, so I'm not going to take it. But I was behaving like anxious father. I said, no, I think there is no harm in taking it. Take it. She didn't take it. Then my colleagues in neurology department, that time I was still in neurology department of AIIMS, so they all were very caring for me. They said, considering your age, you need not come to the department and don't see patients. We will handle everything. But you take hydroxychloroquine because that is going to prevent, if at all you get any risk of exposure. So I was in two minds, and then one of my colleagues said, no, don't forget about your evidence-based medicine. I'm telling you, you take this. And she sent the medicines to me, and I said, okay. Obviously, they are my well-wishers. So I took, I think, 2 tablets of hydroxychloroquine. And then I think the same day, I had some missed beats. So I shared with my family, and my doctor said, I told you don't take it. I'm just not going to allow you to take it. So just forget about it. So I stopped taking it. The message is, you see, today everybody knows that hydroxychloroquine has no role in COVID-19. But how do we know this? And why did we make mistake, or President Trump made mistake? The reason is that time there was no clinical trial of hydroxychloroquine in COVID-19. That's why, just on the basis of some laboratory evidence, people had started extrapolating to clinical settings and started taking it. And I think some people who don't follow the evidence may still be taking it, but it is completely out of the picture now as far as prevention or treatment of COVID-19 is concerned. And how did it happen? It happened because there were many clinical trials. And clinical trials showed that it is neither efficacious nor safe. Some people had sudden death following hydroxychloroquine intake, and that was confirmed in some studies. Thereafter, people stopped taking it. On the other hand, you see the beauty of clinical trials. Vaccines have come up, and they came up very quickly. I would say one of the speakers said it takes on an average 10 years to manufacture a vaccine or to bring it to the market. But in this case, it has come within 1 year. And that is also thanks to clinical trials and thanks to those who participated in the trial. And now we have so many vaccines, as you can but it also shows us the limitation, because if you follow the news in Europe, particularly this Covishield, which was its Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, they started restricting in younger people, and there is still restrictions in many countries. And the reason was they found some unusual blood clotting in people who took this vaccine. And clinical trial didn't reveal it because it was done in, maybe 20,000-25,000 subjects. But when you use it in millions of people, hundreds and thousands of subjects, then only rare side effects will come into the play, which we are now recognizing is one of the known side effects. But fortunately in India, it doesn't happen or happens so rarely, like maybe 1 in 2 million or so. So people did not be scared about taking this. So this is the right time to understand why and what clinical trials can do and cannot do. And this is also exemplified in the story of multiple sclerosis. And when I talk about trials in multiple sclerosis, I tell people that, look here, it is the clinical trials did not originate in medicine. It originated in agriculture. People who were experimenting with different fertilizers. They had a statistician who was later called Sir Ronald Fisher, who was advising them how to find out which fertilizer works better. And the yield of a crop depends not only on fertilizer, it depends on what kind of soil it is, whether there is irrigation facility or not, whether there is, what is the quality of soil, whether there is, you can say, those kinds of nutrients which plants need, all those things are important. So when new fertilizers came, he said, to know whether the fertilizer makes a difference, you need to do a study. So the people said, how can you do a study when you know that lands have different degree of fertility, they have different kind of constituents, there is different level of irrigation facility, there is different level of, so many differences in soil quality and so on. So he said, no, I can tell you. You give me 1,000 farms and I will tell you how to decide which fertilizer works, which doesn't. And what he did was, he simply numbered all the farms, small, big, whatever it was, they were there. And then he said, you use fertilizer A in this and fertilizer B in this according to what I tell you. And after numbering, he just started tossing a coin. So he had decided that if even number comes, then, head and when you toss a coin, you have the two sides. So depending on the side, he decided which fertilizer has to be used. So by tossing a coin, if you decide like this, obviously every farm has 50% chance to get one fertilizer or the other. And when you have thousands, then all the two groups become very similar as far as the soil quality is concerned, or irrigation is concerned, or constituents is concerned. So many things which have some impact on the crop yield become very similar, except that in one group you use fertilizer A, in another group use fertilizer B. So whatever difference in crop yield you see is because of the fertilizer and not because of the soil characteristics or any other characteristics of the farm. So he established this method This is what he called randomized trial. That was brought to medicine in 1947 by UK epidemiologist and biostatistician Bradford Hill and his colleague, who actually used it first time in pulmonary tuberculosis. So you can imagine 1947, 50 years passed, and then London there was a celebration of I think 50 years means Diamond Jubilee or Golden Jubilee. Golden Jubilee was celebrated in London, where our common friend Dennis and my common friend Salim Yusuf, who is also a proponent and famous person in clinical trials, he attended, and we know that it was a great occasion. So clinical trials have contributed to the mankind more than I think anything else or any other scientific endeavor, maybe except human genome, which time will tell us, has contributed. And in multiple sclerosis, it has made a huge difference. Because I can tell you, when I was training in neurology in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, there was a time, and I'm talking about 1983-84, that we'll go to the bedside and say, well, this is a patient of multiple sclerosis. We had no drug to offer, nothing to offer. So actually, our professor used to say, give her TLC. So we used to ask, what is TLC? So he will come to the, our side room where we used to take tea together, and he'll tell us, TLC means tender loving care. So give tender loving care. That was the only thing available for multiple sclerosis at that time. But now, thanks to clinical trials, now you are asking which medicine is better for me. So it's not only that you have a range of options available, but you are also actually having option of selecting one or the other depending on the patient characteristics and patient choice and affordability and so on. So it has changed the scenario, and all kinds of options for everybody, depending on whatever needs or circumstances they are in, there is something available for multiple sclerosis patients. So you should thank clinical trials for this. And clinical trials are the only methods which tell us what works, what doesn't work, what is safe, what is unsafe, and what is effective, what is not effective. This is the basis of also marketing of any drug in the market. Our Drug Controller General of India or FDA of USA or EMA of Europe don't allow any medicine to come into the market unless there are proper clinical trials. And to that extent, in fact, some exceptions have been made now in COVID time, which is in the form of emergency use authorization. That is also based on clinical trials, but without clinical trials, nothing can come to the market, which is a good thing. And we should thank the clinical trialists for making this possible for mankind. And so many clinical trials people do. We must also thank the patients and participants who participate in this, because at the time of participating, they don't know whether it works or not, whether it is safe or not. Even then they participate. So that's unique, or I would say great contribution of patients who participate in the clinical trials and give us opportunity to learn on the basis of their experience whether something works or not. Then we bring it to the market where the rest of the humanity can actually benefit from the participation of the patients, and of course time and energy spent by the trialists or the scientists. So I will not take much time, but I'm sure you will learn much more from Dennis and Dr. Rotagi, and I'm sure you will enjoy it, and you will have great fun in listening to these esteemed speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Prasad. Yes, we are really expecting to hear and get a lot of information. So I will now request Renuka Niyogi to please say a few words and then introduce the doctors. And the floor is yours. It's over to you, Renuka.
Thank you, Renuka ma'am. I completely echo what Dr. Kameshwarprasad said. This is truly a day, a very important day for all of us as clinical research professionals. And we really want to thank all the patients who have been participating in clinical trials. Truly, the patients are the heart of clinical trials. Everything revolves around them. So today, I really take this opportunity to thank each and every patient who has been participating and who have really contributed in a significant way to the medical science. So on that note, I would like to introduce myself. I am Renuka Nyogi. I am the Western Chapter Chair for the Indian Society for Clinical Research, and I also work in Sanofi. So due to this pandemic, in the last 1 year, there have been some kind of awareness in general public about clinical trials. As everybody is reading, hearing about the vaccines, and thanks to all the news information released by many regulatory authorities, doctors, and not to forget even the WhatsApp University. So in ISCR, we have made a very beautiful film on clinical research, and I would like to show this short film to our audience. Yeah, so I will just quickly share my screen, and Renuka ma'am, you can just confirm to me if you can hear the voice well. Yeah.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay.
My son was diagnosed with brain cancer when he was 4.5 years old.
I nearly lost my leg because of diabetes.
They said my baby was going to die because of her bone marrow cancer.
One day while going to college, I had a fall in a local, and then later on it was diagnosed that it is pilocytic astrocytoma.
Every time you take a tablet, do you think of why you take that particular one? Who made it? When and how was it created? Did you ever think that this simple tablet has been around for many, many years? And did you think of the amount of research that has gone into creating it? In fact, in the long, arduous journey of drug development and in the modern world, clinical testing is the only way to establish safety and efficacy of the medicine. We take these things for granted, but we must acknowledge that years of research have made this possible. Without clinical trials, medicine would not advance, and patients would not get better treatments.
Thanks to the SRTC trials, it has cured, I can say, my brain tumor. I'm feeling much more better now. I also represented my college for the badminton tournaments after this SRTC trials and completed my graduation. And now I'm just an intern with some company which is also into genomics.
If my diabetes had gone worse, it could have been amputated, but I was saved. Thanks to my doctor. He told me the many years of research and all the work that scientists had put in for developing a new treatment. So many patients had tried the treatment. Because they had tried the treatment, it also benefited me. My disease is under control and I'm feeling better. And now I can play with my grandchildren for many years to come.
A lot of people ask us why clinical trials are important in India. To me, it's multifactorial. From a cancer physician's perspective, it's important that patients get access to the latest medication in cancer, which may not be readily available outside a clinical trial.
Clinical trials aim to find out what benefits can come to patients.
I can give you the example of lung cancer, which I personally treat, where survivals have improved from an average of 6 months in the mid-90s to close to 30 months in this decade. All this has been possible because of a series of well-conducted clinical trials in lung cancer. It is also important for patients in India because access to these medications would not be possible outside a clinical trial.
It is equally important that the patient is looked after in all aspects to see that no adverse event happens or no adverse effect comes to the patient. Before anybody gets on to trial, we do explain in all details what does it entail to be in a given clinical trial and what side effects one should anticipate, so that it's a well-informed patient who is willing to share every information, and he signs an informed consent form to let us know that he has fully understood everything related to trial and he is voluntarily participating in this effort.
Every new drug that is evaluated in a clinical trial goes through a series of very carefully conducted experiments which decide what the dose of the drug in the trial should be. Once that is done, every patient who enters the trial goes through a very careful process of counseling where he or she is counseled about the pros and cons of participating in the trial, possible risks of the new drug, the benefits of participating in the trial, and enough time is given for the patient to decide, along with their family and relatives, whether to participate in the trial.
My baby's bone marrow cancer is under control. There are high chances of her to live for many more years. I'm eternally grateful to my doctor for suggesting a clinical trial.
Yeah? What?
The Indian government has very stringent regulations in place now to protect the patients. Companies which have sponsored good quality global clinical trials in India for 20 years now are even stricter than the law of the land in the way they conduct trials. Despite the risks which are explained to every patient and the fact that each patient only participates after fully understanding the entire process, many participate in clinical trials for the simple reason that not only does science advance, but more importantly, mankind as a whole benefits as well. Clinical testing can save your life. It can save millions of lives.
Yeah, this was a very emotional film, I would say, on clinical research. And we, again, thanks to all the patients who have really participated, we are getting the drugs today in the market because of your participation in clinical trials. On that note, I would now like to invite our eminent speaker, Dr. Dennis Xavier. He is our ISCR Executive Committee member. He's a professor of pharmacology, ex-HOD and ex-Vice Dean at St. John Medical College. He heads the Division of Clinical Research at the St. John's Research Institute. He has developed research collaborations in about 200 centers across India and 2 other Asian countries, and has recruited over 1,15,000 participants in over 30 large clinical projects. He is serving on about 25 international research steering committees. He's the principal investigator of the NIH, USA Center of Excellence for Chronic Diseases. He runs different courses in research methodology, biostatistics, and EPM since 2009, and have trained about 2,100 people from India and 7 other countries on different courses. He also has been a member and chairperson of ethics committees and has over 150 publications and have also developed 6 book chapters. My God, this introduction is really very short, Dr. Xavier. So welcome. And I would like to now take us the journey, give a little bit of explain to our patients, what is ISCR all about, and again, explain what is clinical research.
Thank you very much, Renuka, and MSSI Renuka, if I may, for this opportunity. This is really wonderful to have a patient group on this, I would say, a very auspicious day to talk about clinical trials. I started clinical trials in 1999, so this is my 22nd year, and India's come a long, long way. The Indian public has matured. They are much more informed. They ask questions and participate even more actively. But still, there is a long way to go, and initiatives like this would help a great deal. Also, thank you very much, Dr. Kameshwarprasad. We have shared the stage many times before, but the first time that we're sharing a screen to talk to patients, to talk to young researchers about clinical research, and particularly your contributions serve on firstly teaching people neurology, teaching people clinical research, as well as teaching evidence-based medicine in this country is really huge. So thank you very much, and thank you also for illustrating the concept of randomization using the initial experiments by Ronald Fisher, Sir Ronald Fisher, over 100 years ago in agriculture, actually. So with this, let me share my slides. I have a brief presentation, largely questions that are on your minds. I am trying to answer those for you, and I'll do my best in the next 30 minutes or so. So it's already been mentioned, but here are a couple of slides about the International Clinical Trials Day, 20th of May. So, right. So this is International Clinical Trials Day, simply because on this day, few centuries ago, a Scottish physician, James Lynn, that's the person here, James Lynn, he conducted the first clinical trial without randomization, though, on a group of sailors who were suffering from scurvy, which was largely due to vitamin C deficiency. We know that very well. But he had groups of people who took vitamin C and found that it cured scurvy. So we commemorate that way. I also want to tell you about this logo that we have, which is ISCR's motto and logo on patients first, changing the world with a leap of faith. And this logo, and why we celebrate International Clinical Trials Day with the theme patients first. We discussed this many times in ISCR. What should we? We cannot have clinical trials without patients. Patients are the central part, and I will tell you later. In fact, people have all kinds of misconceptions. Am I a guinea pig? Am I being taken advantage of? Am I being told? So I will tell you there is another P for patients, which I will tell you about towards the end of my talk. So patients come first. The theme acknowledges selfless contribution of clinical trial patients in bringing new treatments for patients at large, for advancing science. Right, and this logo also it reiterates a commitment to patient safety. Remember, safety always comes first. Of course, confidentiality and ethics. And this logo, the patient first logo, has been designed by this young lady here, who's a patient who was participating in trials as well. And this design symbolizes the patient taking a leap of faith. Can you see this patient leaping up, right, through the heart to help cure disease, right? And this rings is a rigorous process through which clinical trials are conducted. So thank you, Meryl Manning, for this logo and for your wonderful concept. So with this, let's look at what are the goals of my talk today, that is understanding clinical trials a little better for patients. I'll just take a pause and check with the organizers if my slides are visible well and the audio is all right.
All well, Dennis, Dr. Dennis.
Thank you very much. So this is for patients and lay people in extremely simple language. For some of you really well educated and having read about clinical trials, it may be too simplistic, but let me keep it that way. For patients and lay people to understand the purpose and methods of clinical trials, why we do clinical trials and how it is done. Why do we want to do this? Why do we want to be better informed? For the simple reason that we want to enable participation as equal partners. Dear friends, I want to emphasize on this. Let me put a box around this. That's as well as I can draw. My daughters tell me I can't draw, but I'm learning to draw using the mouse. Okay, to enable participation as equal partners to alleviate suffering and curing disease. Remember, you're partnering with doctors, with scientists, clinical trial professionals around the world globally. And I'll give you some numbers here which will help you. So you are an equal partner in doing all this, or maybe an unequal partner with more share, a higher share in taking the credit. So we'll try and understand this in very, very simple terms. So what are we going to talk about today? So firstly, how do medicines reach us? Dr. Prasad told it very clearly, and also in the video you heard, actually that's my friend's voice from ISCR, Dr. Virat Suvarna, who spoke so nicely. Medicines reach us through rigorous clinical trials. And I'm going to tell you in this talk about checks and balances and the procedures it goes through before drugs reach us. So we'll speak briefly about the phases of clinical trials. I teach my students and others. I give them all the technical bits, but I'm going to give you all the simple, non-technical bits about clinical trials today that you would like to know and understand. Some concepts. What is this placebo? Is it a fake drug? Blinding. Oh dear, who's blinded? Right? And informed consent. What is this? I signed a 6-page form. Something was written there. They told me something I didn't understand. Is that what informed consent is? And what about compensation? And are you paid? If you participate in clinical trials, are you paid? What if something goes wrong? Right? So let's discuss all of these concepts. What are the regulations? What are the checks and balances that we have, right, for clinical trials? Let's look at that. How should I participate? You're calling me an equal partner. How should I participate? How can I be an equal partner? And finally, do things go wrong? Why do they go wrong? How often do they go wrong? And finally, very importantly, if you're an equal partner, how can I help other people? So friends, that's what we're going to talk about today. How medicines reach us? All medicines reach us after 2 steps. Very broadly, I'm keeping this simple. One, something called preclinical research and clinical research. And we are going to focus today on clinical research. But what is this preclinical research? Very briefly. Scientists develop several thousands of new molecules that has potential for use. And all of this is rigorously evaluated in the lab. And lakhs of molecules go to a few tens, 10, 15, 20 molecules, 100,000 to 2 lakh molecules, 3 lakh molecules. They go to few tens of molecules. Of course, prior to 10 years, very rigorous and laborious processes used to happen in the labs. But now we're using advanced technology. We're using computer sciences, computational technology, machine learning, and other things to fast track this process. So preclinical research is fast tracked, but clinical research cannot be fast tracked, right? Although we are bringing in efficiencies in how we do clinical research, because clinical research, you have to give the drug to the patient, you have to wait, you cannot fast track, right? So clinical research is done on humans, right? Of course, in the lab, we do physical tests, chemical tests, and tests on animals, tissues and animals. We leave that out now. We'll focus more on clinical research done on humans, right? There are also another name for that is also clinical trials, when we are evaluating drugs to use in the future. And this is done in 4 phases. And I'll tell you about this briefly. What does it take? Firstly, a new drug, what does it take? It takes money, it takes time, and it takes people to do this. It takes money, it takes time, and it takes people. What kind of money does it take? If you look at the internet, they give you different kinds of estimates, but the key point over here, it takes a lot of money. So what is this? It ranges from 1 to 3 billion US dollars. That's a lot of money. So when I give this talk, when we have a blackboard, I come and ask people, come, write $1 billion. 1 followed by 9 zeros is $1 billion. Oh, that's a lot of money. Yeah, $1 billion, a lot of money, but that's in the US. No, how much is it in Indian rupees? Right? So here is 1 followed by 9 zeros. Right? How much is it in Indian rupees? Taking a dollar as 70 rupees. That many zeros. Now start looking backwards. It is 7,000 crore rupees. Or if it's $3 billion, 21,000 crore rupees. That is serious money. To get 1 new drug out, oh dear, that's a lot of serious work that goes on. How long does it take? Few months, few years, right? Now, of course, as Dr. Prasad said, it's never happened in the history of the world before that we got a vaccine in 8 to 10 months. Incredible research. That's because people cooperated, right? The viral details were released out into the open. Many people began to work on it, and it worked fast. But we're talking about traditional drug development. It takes 10 to 15 years of work. right? And how many people are involved? Several thousands of people. Sometimes it's difficult to count them. Scientists, research staff, normal volunteers, and patients. By the time one drug reaches the market for regular patients to use, probably 25,000 people. Of course, depends on the kind of disease we're talking about. My work is all in cardiovascular disease, heart disease, strokes, diabetes. So for those kind of trials, we have about 25 to 30,000 patients who would have taken it in the trial format or during trials before the drug comes out into the market. Multiple sclerosis, much fewer patients though, right? So billions of dollars, 10 plus years and several thousands of people. And I'm sure you will agree that these are some of the best people around in the world in terms of scientists, in terms of research staff, research management people, including finance, including legal, project management, logistics, huge undertaking. This is huge undertaking. So normal volunteers and patients, that is where, your role comes in. So without you, maybe next time I make these slides, I should put normal volunteers, patients, then scientists, research staff, etc. I should do that. Pardon me for not having thought of it already. Right? Where is it done? In hundreds of labs and hospitals. I've been involved in phase 3 clinical trials where we did a trial in 1,400 hospitals around the world in 42 centers. One of the trials that we did a few years ago. So it is a humongous undertaking to evaluate trials and bring a new drug out into the market. And remember, not all trials are quote unquote successful. After all this research, we say, okay, this drug doesn't work, keep it aside and start the process all over again. All over again. Are we sad? Are we frustrated? Yes, but that's what research is about, right? So sometimes we're successful, many times we're not successful. In fact, the first couple of big trials that I was involved in were not successful. And we found out that this drug doesn't work. Again, remember Dr. Kameshwarprasad's example of hydroxychloroquine. Initially, people said, and it was a big noise, right? People couldn't even pronounce hydroxychloroquine, but they wanted to take it, right? And of course, our former president of the US, didn't help matters much. But that apart, a properly done clinical trial and a few others after that said this is not useful, don't use it. So that is also important information to find out that a drug does not work in a particular condition, right? You stop using it, it's a waste of money. It's risky. Why use something that is of no use but has potential risk? So that's also important information, right? So getting a new drug out into the market, a successful trial takes a lot of time, effort, and money. Right, so let me give you a little diagram, very, very simple diagram on the story of a drug. So we do preclinical trials, right? Preclinical research, no, they're not trials, preclinical research. So you can see this test tube here, all work in the lab, and of course, even animal studies are preclinical studies. Then we have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I'll give you a little more text on this. So in phase 1, a few tens of participants, phase 2, a few hundreds, and phase 3, a few thousands of participants, right? After preclinical research, a lot of data is given to regulators. Can we use this in humans? So drug is approved for testing in humans. Then after phase 3, the drug is submitted for regulatory approval. FDA is the US regulator. Here in India, we have DCGI. In Europe, we have EMEA, etc. So it's submitted for approval. They evaluate it. Sometimes they take months and months. They ask for more research to be done. And then they come back and then they finally approve the drug, right? And right after approving the drug is released into the market for use among people. Whoever was involved in developing the drug, they go and present these results. I've been fortunate to present some of these results in big conferences. We present it, we publish it in big and important journals, we give press conferences, and these days we give simultaneous global webinars. I was involved in that recently from San Francisco just before the lockdown. We simultaneously spoke to 40 different countries and answered their questions. That was at 11:30 in the night we did that and again we repeated that at 5:30 in the morning just to make sure different people are able to get the news quickly and hear from the people who conducted the research. So the drug is approved, it's available in the market. We don't stop our research there. We continue with phase 4 research. This is also called post-marketing research, phase 4. So several thousands of participants are involved here again. So let me give you a little text on the same thing that I told you. So you can see the text and also remember it better. So phase 1, question, is it safe? Does the body accept it? Does it get absorbed? If you give it orally, does it get absorbed? Where does it get absorbed? How does the liver handle it? How does the kidney handle it? When does it get excreted? All of that we find out. And this is done in normal volunteers. It's not done on patients. 30, 50, 90, sometimes 100 volunteers, we do that. And very carefully data is collected. And remember the first question. First question is, it's safe. And these people are, I sometimes joke and call them, these are supermen, right? They are, very fit. They have no problems at all. And they are between the ages of, 18 and 32 or 18 and 35, very fit, usually men, sometimes in women. So this is phase 1, right? It's done in one center or a few centers, 3-5 centers. So this is phase 1 trials, we call it. Phase 2, again, is it safe? First question. That's a question we ask. Does it work? So for the first time, we're going to give it to patients with mild disease, low risk patients, few hundreds, maybe 100, 300, 500 patients. We give it to them. Does it really work? So for the first time, after so many years of work, we give it to patients and try to find out, does it work? Right? And it's done in a few centers. It could be 10, 20 odd centers that we do this. So that's phase 2 trials. Phase 3, again, the question, is it safe? Is it better than the best drug that is already available or the best treatment that's already available? If it is a new drug for a new condition, right, we test that. New drug for a condition, we test it against placebo. And I'll tell you a bit about placebo later on. So is it better than the best drug or the treatment that's been given now? Suppose there's already a drug for that. Is this new drug that I'm developing better than that drug? So we test it, right? We test it. We have groups to compare. Remember that analogy or that example Dr. Prasad gave about different types of farms and fertilizers. Similarly, like that, we compare it with the best available treatment. So how many patients? Few hundreds to a few thousands of patients. So as I told you, in cardiovascular trials, in heart disease and in strokes, we have typically 12,000, 18,000. One of the trials I was involved in was about 22,000 patients that we look at, right? So hundreds of centers around the world, many different countries, these trials are done. So can you imagine the enterprise, right? The logistics involved, the communications that must happen, and the careful care that is taken to make sure things are all done well. Then this drug is approved for use among patients. Of course, it is, as I told you, after phase 3, we submit the data to the regulators. So experts will sit. People who are not involved in these studies will sit and look at it carefully. They will ask you this question and that question. We have to answer all of that. And then they say, oh, okay, it's good. So it now adds value to the patients. Yes, it costs money, right? They will look at that as well, right? Does it fulfill an unmet need right now? And is the cost not too bad? And then they approve it. Of course, some drugs, particularly multiple sclerosis, these drugs are very expensive to take. And of course, in some places, and societies like MSSI, etc., make it possible to facilitate patients getting these drugs. Drug is approved, then we don't stop doing research there. This is now phase 4 studies. Now, all along, till now, all the evaluation of this drug was done in well-controlled situations. Well-controlled situations, very, very carefully done. Now it is, I'm not saying no control, but less controlled situations. It's given to patients out. Many other doctors, around the world will begin to use it. Again, the question is it safe? That's the first question we ask, right? Several thousands of patients, data is being collected. And one of the key things that we do, so far, maybe 20 to 25,000 people have received it. But now, several thousands of people, lakhs of people will start using it, and then we collect what is called representative data from many different places, and we look for what is called rare side effects. Rare side effects, and sometimes at this stage, the drug is withdrawn as well. You can imagine the disappointment of the people who worked on it. However, we are still happy that we have got disappointed, but we are happy that a drug that is dangerous is withdrawn. Then we go back and start from alpha all over again and continue our research. So rare adverse effects we look for. And what we call in the real world. Remember I just told you that we look at it in places where there's not much tight control. We look at it in the real world. Let's now look at some concepts related to the clinical trials. You'll read it in newspapers, you'll hear it in the news, and you'll read it in informed consent forms. And so let's try to understand this. Then I'll try, as always, to keep it as simple as possible. Placebo-controlled trial is given, And then when actually doctors also find it difficult to explain what is placebo. Some people ask questions such as this: is it a fake drug? It is. What is it? I mean, one is drug, and what is the other one? What is it you're giving us? Is it a fake drug or is it no drug? What does it mean? Why are you giving me that? No. I will participate only if you guarantee me that I will get the real drug. You're telling that this drug is possibly good. Why are you not giving it to me? So these are questions that patients have asked. And one of the things that we do when we conduct clinical trials and we train, people doing clinical trials, we train them to explain placebo in simple terms. And this is what a placebo means. It's an inert substance which has no intended therapeutic effect. Suppose I'm giving a drug to reduce blood pressure. I give a similar tablet, a similar white tablet, okay, which does not have the drug, but it has an inert substance. It could be calcium carbonate or sucrose or something else which has no effect on either blood pressure or anything to do with blood pressure. It has no intended therapeutic effect. Some people say, but I've heard of placebo effect, right? Oh, my doctor sometimes has told me, you just take some vitamins, you'll be all right, right? So yes, there is something called a placebo effect, but for now, for our understanding, placebo as a tablet or an injection or whatever is an inert substance with no intended treatment effect or therapeutic effect. It is not expected to do the same thing that the drug that we are trying out does, right? Blinding. Patients or doctors will not know if it is the drug or placebo. Why do we need to do this? To avoid any bias in assessment. So let me explain what this bias in assessment means. Let's assume we are giving a drug for pain, right? And the doctor knows that this is active drug and this is placebo, right? We're giving a drug for pain, and then the doctor goes and asks the patient, how are you feeling now? No, doctor, the pain is just like, are you sure? No, it should be a little bit better, isn't it? Are you sure? No, actually think about it. When same time, yesterday before you took the drug, how are you feeling? I remember when I came on rounds, you said you were feeling terrible, but you're looking better now. Is this doctor a fraud? Is this doctor trying to do something wrong? No. All of us have biases in our life in general, right? This doctor is not a fraud. I'll tell you about fraudulent doctors in another slide later on. That is bad. All of us humans naturally, when certain information is known or not known, right, our judgment is clouded. Our judgment is changed to some extent. So things such as pain or well-being and things like that. Same thing happens to patients as well. If the patient knows that this is an active drug, even if there's no reduction in pain, you'll feel, my doctor has given this drug and I should be actually feeling better. Or the other way around, I know it is placebo. Even if I'm feeling better, I'll say, I'm not feeling better, right? So it avoids any biases, and therefore we are leaving out all these errors in judgment or any biases that may creep in. Remember, once again, it's not a mistake. It's not a fraud. It's not a fraud, right? So we end up making mistakes if we don't blind. That is the reason for blinding. So when you see in your informed consent form that it is said that this is a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, this is what it means. Okay, so this is a fundamental design issue in clinical trials. I'll say this again, it's a very important and critical design issue. One of the concepts I don't have on my slides, but Dr. Prasad, once again, he explained it nicely. That is called randomization. Say double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized controlled trial. Randomized means dividing people into two groups: people who get the new drug or the placebo. How do we divide? Old people in this group and young people in this group, males in this group, females in this group, people who come on Mondays in one group and Tuesdays in another group. None of that works. We must have a system by which there is no system actually that we know of that we can put them into two groups. This is, in extremely, extremely simple language, the process of randomization. Of course, tossing a coin is one way of doing it, but these days we use computer programs to do it. Nobody will know who is getting what. That is blinding. And the process of allocating people into one group or the other, the comparator group as we call it, is called randomization. So I don't have a slide on that, but I thought I'll explain that because it's important. So continuing on, informed consent. Informed consent, dear friends, is a process. It's not a document. It's not an event. It is a process to inform all relevant aspects of the trial to the patient and caretakers. This is an important one, right? Things have gone wrong in the past, about 50, 70 years or more, or even before that, the proper informed consent was not taken and people were taken into trials, right? So now we follow very strong ethical principles, right? And we write this informed consent form in the language that patients can understand, not only, Hindi, Kannada, Bengali or other languages, not even the way in which it is written. It's supposed to be written in a language that, a sixth standard student must be able to understand. In that level of language written, extremely simple. And therefore, I'll be telling you this later again. If there is anything that you do not understand in that, you must ask the doctor. And as our organizer today said, take a paper and pen, keep it with you, make a note of it, go back to the doctor and ask him. Better not to Google it, better not to check it on the internet, better to ask the doctor and get it, right? There are a few key principles in informed consent, right? I just told you it must be in a language that the patient and the caretakers can understand. We need to know the procedures and the risk involved. We must be able to ask questions. We as in patients, I'm talking for patients, so we must be able to ask any number of questions. And if your doctor, I'll tell you boldly over, if your doctor is not patient enough to answer all of those questions, maybe it's okay, maybe the doctor had a bad day that day, come back and ask the doctor again. Even after a couple of attempts, if the doctor has not satisfactorily answered your questions, maybe you should find another site to do the same clinical trial, right? Ask any number of questions, right? And remember, it is totally voluntary. You can refuse to consent without any impact of the care that you're taking. For example, if you're going to Dr. Anshu Rohgi's place, Sir Gangaram Hospital in Delhi, and for whatever reason, if you refuse to participate in a trial, Dr. Rohatgi will give you the exact same treatment that you would have got if you were not in the trial. That is a commitment that we as good clinicians and doctors and researchers have. It doesn't matter. You are an independent, autonomous individual and you can refuse consent. You don't have to give any reasons. And a doctor should not ask. When we train our doctors, we say, don't ask the patient why he or she is refusing. Without any reasons, you can refuse. And one final thing is, even after consenting, you can withdraw. You can withdraw, but my request to you, dear friends, you have the authority, you have the full autonomy to withdraw even after consenting, even after participating for 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever. There are different reasons why patients withdraw. And in my opinion, the number one reason for withdrawing from patients is inadequate communication between you and the doctors and his or her team. So my request to you is to go back and communicate well, but still you're free to withdraw. Please keep that in mind. It is your absolute right, and even after withdrawing, your treatment in that hospital for whatever condition will continue without any impact. Why should I participate in trials? There is only one reason. I wish all of you were in front of me and you had a piece of paper and pen. I would ask you to write that. What is one reason you should participate? And in an online platform, it's still possible to do this. Maybe you should put it on the chat. Is that possible? That our participants can put this in the chat box and one of you can read it out to me. There's only one reason I should participate in clinical trials. Why don't we have some interaction on this? Ms. Renuka, do you think we could do this?
Yes, Dr. Xavier, some participants, they have
already started putting it on the chat box. Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm not able to see the chat box, so give people about 1 minute time. Let's give people 1 minute time. Yes. I would say there's only one reason to participate. So what could be that reason? Please put it on the chat box. Feel free.
So Sanjeev has already written. He is.
Hold on. Okay. Don't reveal the answers. Let people write independently.
Okay.
In fact, the chat. So please don't look at what other people have written. You write your reason why you should participate.
Right.
So then, Renuka, you can maybe summarize it for us.
Yes.
So let's give people 30 seconds.
Dr. Xavier, you have to keep on mentioning which Renuka.
Both are Renukas, it's okay. Okay, so any of the Renukas can please kindly volunteer to let us know. Just summarize it for us, please. I mean, What are people
Right.
saying? I'm not able to see the chat box. Yeah.
No problem. So, majority is obviously they're writing humanity help. Only way to progress medicine is we help ourselves. Sanjeev has made a very nice quote: "Is help to get help." You know, betterment of people health. Help yourself. I think help is really coming out very prominently in all the chats. Rekha is writing as a value addition to the management of MS, and research for human benefits. So very interesting question.
Right. So please
Yeah.
take down.
I think some people are still writing. Do you want to?
Okay, doesn't matter. So in the interest of time, we'll move on. So Renuka, please write down these people's
Yes.
names and then their numbers. So you got to call them to give talks next time. People like us can all go back because they're all beautiful reasons. Beautiful reasons. It's
Correct.
really wonderful. Right. I would say
Dr.
the only
Dennis,
reason-
as a timekeeper, I'm just saying that we are almost on the 30-minute mark.
Another max 5 to 10 minutes max.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm also keeping a track on the clock right now. Right. Okay, thank you for that. So there's only one reason, in my opinion, to participate, and that is to support science. What does that mean? Right? That this may benefit future patients, because we don't know right now, isn't it? So clinical trials, as we've heard before, is the only way in which to bring out drugs, and you know it better than anybody else, the impact drugs have had on humanity. I deliberately left it out. This is a well-informed audience, and MSSI is doing a great job from what I've heard of all the workshops you've done. So if it was any other group, it was a general thing, then I would start with that. So that this may benefit future patients. Now, I want to participate in a trial. Will I have any benefit at all? Right? Maybe. So that means no benefit. You may not have any benefit, or maybe you may have a benefit. So let us go with no expectations and say no benefit for you if you participate in this trial. So sometimes I tell this to patients, right? You may not get any benefit in this trial. Okay, maybe. So what are the benefits that is potential for me, right? One thing we can assure you is that you'll get the best possible care. Does it mean that if I'm not in a clinical trial, I will not get the same care? No, you'll get the same care, right? But the kind of tests that are being done, the kind of monitoring that's done, and in clinical trials, we keep calling you, you've missed your visit, please come, and we want to evaluate you. And of course, in good hospitals like AIIMS Delhi, or Sir Gangaram's again in Delhi, or St. John's Bangalore, or other places, right, we provide good care. But when you're in a trial, there is that much more scrutiny that is done, and very, very careful care is done. So some tests or procedures may be free, right? It may not be free, right? If it is, what are the circumstances where it is free? Only when it is required for this clinical trial and it's not done in routine care, then these tests or procedures may be free. Sometimes travel to hospital may be covered. Remember, again, sometimes, not always. Suppose we want you to come every week to the hospital for 2 months. In regular care, you would come only every month. Then it is unethical to tell the patients to come every week for the purpose of your trial. So then, I sit on ethics committees as well. We tell, no, you got to cover that cost, because a patient is spending his or her money to come only for the purpose of the trial. So please cover these costs. So sometimes if you're sitting in the outpatient of a clinic and you have a neighbor sitting next to you, and you both are in clinical trials, one person, he says, I got taxi money today. Oh, I didn't get taxi money. How come? This is the reason why. You are in different trials, and in your trial, it is usual care in the sense, you're coming only once a month. So these are little nuances. These are questions that patients have. Sometimes, there is less clarity on this. Again, please keep in mind, these should not be the reason for you to participate in trials, right? Oh, I may get free treatment, or I may get free drug. People say I may get free drug. Remember, half the patients may not be getting, will not be getting the new drug, and we don't know whether the new drug is actually beneficial or not. That's why we're testing it. So these are not the reasons for you to be participating, right? Okay. So the only reason to participate, once again, is to, like all of you said, help. That word help came multiple times in your response, and that is what is important. What if something goes wrong? Can something go wrong in clinical trials? Yes, as in any endeavor, things can go wrong. What if something goes wrong? What if I have an adverse effect? Right? Adverse effects can be expected or unexpected. Expected adverse events are all written in the informed consent form. We list it out. Sometimes it's even scary for patients, but we write it. This is what is known, and this is what we can expect. And if it happens, we will provide you the best possible care. We'll also ensure that you don't get even these expected adverse effects. Sometimes there are unexpected adverse effects. What do we do for that? We don't know about it. Remember, this is a new drug. We don't know about it. It's not expected. And when this happens, we will take care. In India, we cover medical management for unexpected adverse effects, right? We also provide compensation, right? There are mechanisms, there are calculations, and ethics committees approve it, the regulators approve it as well. So this is possible. What checks and balances are there? There are multiple agencies that oversee, firstly approve and oversee the trial. So we have the national regulatory authorities such as the US FDA or the Drugs Controller General of India. There's also for academic studies that the Health Ministry screening committee is there. Then we have institutional ethics committees. Without these approvals, we cannot start anything. We cannot even talk to a patient, leave alone giving the drug or doing any test. We cannot even talk to patients, right? Also, things are put in the public domain, the Clinical Trials Registry of India. And in the US, we have this clinicaltrials.gov, a website, right? All the details about the trial are loaded here. And only after we get approval from them can we even do this, start the trial. So this is available in the public domain. So here, in addition to checks and balances, information for you, if you want to know what trials are ongoing in multiple sclerosis or strokes or diabetes in India, just go to CTRI, Clinical Trials Registry of India, and you can find out from there. You can give the search terms and it's available there. Right. In addition, what procedures for checks and balances, what procedures are there? Sponsor undertakes monitoring. Right? They will go periodically to the site and check everything, very meticulous. It's a very strenuous process. And now, due to the pandemic and lockdowns, it's that much more difficult for us. We're still doing it online. We're still, getting approvals, and then we're doing it online. Sponsor does monitoring. Sponsor also does another procedure called audit. Right? An independent agency comes and checks it again. Checks even the monitoring that was done periodically. Right? And then these auditors, these are called monitors, and these are called auditors. These people are very experienced and I would say very smart people. I've had lots of interactions with auditors, and they do a fantastic job. And again, their focus is on patients. Although this is sponsor audits, the auditors are independent agencies. They will come and oversee it carefully. Ethics committees, of late, the last few years, regulations require that the ethics committee also goes from the same institution. They will go, okay, I want to check this, I want to check your files, I want to check this, etc. Right? And also, finally, the regulators conduct inspections. Right? The DCGI can send inspectors, and they can come and verify. They will verify all of this as well. Did you do monitoring? Why did you not do enough monitoring? How come there's no auditing? And then what was done about this audit finding? They will check. So, friends, you'll realize that there are multiple types and layers of checks and balances when clinical trials are being done. Some concerns, and now I'm jumping on to the patient side, and from the patient side, I'm raising some concerns. Will my doctor be paid for conducting clinical trials? He or she get money for it? Answer is yes, they will get money. But why? Or for what do they get money? Remember, I told you the amount of procedures that we have to go through. I didn't describe all of it, but extremely rigorous procedures, right? And they cover costs of personnel. People like Dr. Rohaki is very busy in the OPD, very busy doing other things. He cannot be doing each and everything that is required in the clinical trial. So he employs people, he trains them, he tests them, right? And so we have to pay these people's salary. And these people are qualified, experienced people, and many of them you interact with. They call site clinical research associates or whatever, different names are given to them, right? And then some special tests will have to be done. Sometimes new equipment will have to be bought. Of course, stationery. Of course, now it is internet, tablets, computers. Those days, I'm almost saying those days, prior to the pandemic, we had to travel for meetings, and travels cost a lot of money. We had to pay the ethics committee, and so many other costs are there. It is to cover all these costs. These are very laborious processes and expensive processes, and this is why they are paid to cover these costs. Is there fraud in clinical trials? Oh dear, sensitive question. Right? If there is more time, I would ask you, how many people say yes, how many people say no, and how many people say don't know? Right? Yes, there is fraud, but let me tell you, It is quite rare. Right? I've been involved in clinical trials for over 20 years, Dr. Prasad, probably more than 25 years. And yes, we have come across fraud, but it's extremely rare. It is just like asking, are there plane crashes? Yes, there are plane crashes. It's extremely, extremely rare. But if it happens, it's on the front page of the newspapers. Nobody writes how many thousands of flights took off every day and landed. Nobody writes about that. How many trains leave a station and come back safely to the station? Nobody writes about that. But if there's a crash, if there's a flight crash or train accident, we write about it. It's extremely rare it happens. Why does it happen? This is because of ill-informed or wrongly motivated doctors and teams. Are there such people? Yes, there are there. It's unfortunate they are there, right? But important to keep in mind that it is very rare. What happens to these people? Remember, with all the checks and balances, we can find out. Now, of late, in the last 8 to 10 years, there's another system that we're following, something called, it's a little complex term, but I'll tell it, it's called central statistical monitoring. As data is coming in, there are statistical programs written, software is written to monitor, is somebody fudging data. Human beings are not good at fudging data, right? Data, numbers, right? Numbers have, they have a little character of themselves, right? And we can find that out. Right, so there are this multiple checks and balances. We find this out, and such people are severely punished. They are blacklisted by regulators and sponsors, and we tell them right at the start, this is what will happen to you. And with all our checks and balances, they're also afraid of doing it. So let's go back. Is there fraud in clinical trials? Yes, but it's extremely rare. And these people, and it happens, unfortunately. It does happen, and then people are taken to task. To conclude, how can I help as a patient or a patient group or a relative or a caretaker of a patient? How can I help? Organize more such talks. MSSI is very well organized, as I can see. But if you're part of other groups or you know people with other conditions or other groups, organize more such talks and let's learn more from good sources, right? Authentic sources who give you balanced views, as we are trying to do today. Ask questions before participating in clinical trials. Ask questions and be patient and participate actively. Support other patients who want to participate in clinical trials. They may call you and ask you, should I participate in trials? Hopefully now with this talk and the support you're getting from MSSI, I'm sure you will give them the right balanced view about clinical trials. Yes, please do support other patients who ask you about clinical trials. Also, look out for clinical trials and refer people to these clinical trials. When you go to CTRI, as I told you, the website, it will not only tell you what the trial is about, who are all the people, and their names and their phone numbers and their email IDs are there, right? So you can contact them directly as well. And these are names, email IDs of at least 2 people, and they are doctors at their same institution. So look for clinical trials and participate. Why should I help? Why should we do clinical trials, particularly in India? India has 17% of the global population. We have 20% of the disease burden, but only 1.4% of global clinical trials are conducted here. So we need to do more in India. Again, our population is very different. People in the northeast are so different from people in the south to people in Rajasthan and Gujarat, the desert areas. Diversity in many ways, including genetic, is so different. So we need to do more and more clinical trials in all parts of our country. Final question: am I a guinea pig when I participate? Please, no. Right? Unfortunately, even today, irresponsible media people still use this word. I really get upset with those people. And we have actually conducted workshops for media people on how to understand these things and not to use such derogatory terms. Right? No. You are, please keep this in mind, an equal partner. You are a participant. Right? In fact, I teach my students, don't call them a subject anymore. They're not a subject in a trial to subject them to something. Right? Yes, we ask them questions, we do tests for them, etc. But they're not subjects, right? And they're participants as an equal partner in our endeavor. So thank you, friends. Thank you. Without you, we cannot do clinical trials. You are central and patients first, please keep that in mind. And without clinical trials, we cannot have new drugs. So if there is one message you're taking back home today, is that you are an equal partner in clinical trials, and without you, we cannot do clinical trials. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis Xavier. I think this was truly an enlightening session. I think in the interest of time, maybe we will take the questions at the end, because I would now like to invite our next eminent speaker. We have noted to all the participants, let me assure you, we have noted all your questions and we will be addressing it to the best of our abilities. But right now, I would like to invite our next eminent speaker, Dr. Anshu Rodki. Our patients, must be knowing him already. He has a big name. He's currently a senior consultant neurology at Sir Gangaram Hospital in Delhi. He has been into clinical practice since 1990s. He has an extensive experience in clinical research and has conducted over 15 clinical trials in neurology only. I'm sure you all are waiting to hear from him, his insights, his own experience of managing clinical trials in multiple sclerosis. So over to you, Dr. Anshu.
Thank you. I must thank both the Renuka ma'am from MSSI and Renuka from Indian Society of Clinical Research for giving me an opportunity to talk about clinical trials and especially MS, which is one of my favorite fields. So I think Dennis has made my job very easy. So I think without wasting any time, I will just share my screen. Yeah, are my slides visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, just a minute. I'll just reduce this. Okay. I will start with.
But do you want to go to the slide mode? Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'm down there. Okay, good evening, everybody. And what I'm going to talk about is MS, and I think all of us will be eagerly listening to what I have to bring to the table in clinical trials in MS. We are going to talk about how clinical trials being conducted. I think Dr. Dennis has already talked about. I will just briefly touch upon that and how are trials in multiple sclerosis being done and how they're being run, and are they really good enough to participate? So just a minute. Okay, so how my talk is structured is, what are clinical trials? I think this has been amply talked by Dr. Dennis. What are phase 3 trials? Why do we need clinical trials in MS? And what is the take-home message? So the first thing is, what is a trial actually? We have been talking about trials and trials and trials. So it is basically a systematic investigation. It's an investigation in human subjects for evaluating the safety and efficacy of a new drug and device. Now, you see, the first thing that comes here is the safety. We're always worried about the safety of the human subjects or participants who are taking this part in this trial. The efficacy comes much later. So it can be a new drug, it could be a new device. So in a clinical trial, we look at any intervention to treat a disease. What is the effectiveness? How safe it is? What dose we need to use? And we are testing a particular drug formulation, a combination of therapies, and what is the effect on the quality of life ultimately. So clinical trials can only be conducted when you have satisfactory information from a quality of the product of the safety. And you definitely need different various kinds of approvals. I think I would not go into that. A clinical trial is the main way of bringing new drugs to the market. And so this is the way that we're going to have newer drugs for multiple sclerosis. So these are the phases in which clinical trials are done. And one thing I would like to exemplify, that for MS, the trials which come to India and which we have people participating are all phase 3 trials. So these are not a phase 1 or a phase 0 trial. These are all phase 3 trial where we need a large number of patients to confirm whether the drug is effective, safe, and to assess the side effect of the drug. So we have phase 3 trials. We are not having any other earlier trials. We have the phase 3 trials, and the drug has already been studied a lot, both about safety as well as efficacy. So whenever you do a trial, you have a particular, what is the objective of the trial? Why I want to do a trial? What is the background? What is the rationale of the trial? Then you have a criteria for selecting patients. In fact, I was seeing the chat box. One of the patients, somebody has put, what are the criteria of going into a trial? So most of the trials that we do in MS, we require at least 2 relapses over the last 1 year. So that is one of the criteria that we use in patient. What is the plan of treatment? What are the procedures we're going to do? what are the evaluation criteria, and what is the statistical section. So when you see this plan, so this is a very, very structured program. So when we take a patient or a subject for a clinical trial, we are going in a very structured program. It is not something random which comes to Dr. Anshu Rohati, he wants to study a particular drug. It is a very, very objective program, and everything is there in black and white. So when we are doing a study, we have evidence that there are a lot of checks and balances, and it is a very, very structured program. The patients are not being used as guinea pigs. That's the message I want to give. So we have a particular objective, we have a background and rationale for using that particular drug, and we have very, very stringent selection criteria. Every patient cannot be taken into a particular trial. And we have a definite treatment plan which is explained to the patient at the time that the informed consent is happening. And fortunately for all of us, for both patients as well as the doctors, whenever we take the informed consent, it has to be a video consent. So everything is in black and white. And then we explain the patient why or he or she is taking part in the treatment, what kind of procedures we are going to do. And we have definite evaluation criteria. How we evaluate whether the drug is going to work or not. And of course, in the end, we have a statistical section, which is very, very important. So this is basically how a drug trial is being run in a formal way. So this is just a diagram to show you what has happened. So first, you have to have a protocol, and this protocol needs to be approved. Then you select two investigators. Then you have an approval process, both for the selectors as well as the trial. Then we undergo patient recruitment and participation. The data is entered and reviewed. You have a statistical analysis. Then you have a presentation of the data publicly, and then it is filed for a drug. So you see, it's a very, very long process, and sometimes the development of a drug takes about number of years. So it's a very tedious process, and it's a long span, and there are lots of checks and balances in the whole process. You can very well see in this whole diagram. So why do we need trials in MS? The trials in MS is the need of the day, because unfortunately, even in 2021, we do not have a definitive therapy for multiple sclerosis. Whether it is relapsing remitting MS, whether it's primary progressive MS, or in secondary progressive. A lot of work has been done in relapsing remitting MS. Now we have a number of therapies, but we do not have a definite treatment. However, unfortunately, both for primary progressive MS and secondary progressive MS, there is no therapy which has been, we can say that it can treat them, because the numbers are much less for primary progressive and secondary progressive MS. So the need of the day is to have more studies, more trials, to have drugs which can alleviate the suffering of these patients of both primary progressive and secondary progressive MS, as we have done for relapsing remitting MS in some way. So this is basically an evolving therapeutic landscape in the treatment of MS, and which came with the interferons in the 1990s. In fact, if it was not for the clinical trials, we would not be having so much of agents for the treatment of both for relapsing remitting MS. And it started in 1994, and today in 2021, I can say that the landscape is still expanding. We have, after the coming of ocrelizumab in 2018, which was one of the first drugs to be approved for primary progressive MS. We have drugs like ofatumumab, drugs like siponimide, which are also being recently all launched. And then we have the newer bruton tyrosine kinase inhibitor, which are right now in clinical trials. So there's a huge spectrum of drugs which are being used especially for relapsing remitting MS. But we need drugs, better drugs, more safe and more efficacious drugs, not only for relapsing remitting MS, a definitive therapy, but also for primary progressive and secondary progressive MS. And this is the need of the hour. And that is why we need more and more clinical trials in MS. So these are some of the drugs which have come through clinical trials, which have been used, and which have been found to be effective in various kinds of patients of MS. So clinical trial in the MS over the last 20 years, have more than 20 years. In fact, when the first interferons were launched was in 94, 95. So it is almost now almost going to be 30 years. And almost more than now the 15 to 20 therapeutic agents have come just because of the clinical trials. So significant achievements in MS therapy today directly relies on clinical trials. And as Dr. Prasad was saying in his introduction, when he was training for neurology, there were no drugs for multiple sclerosis, only tender, loving care. But today, we are fortunate enough that we have a wide range of therapies, right from clinically isolated syndrome to highly active MS, for treating these patients. And why has this come? Because patients have participated. They have participated in this clinical trial, and that's why we are lucky today that in 2021, we have a variety of therapies to be offered to these different patients. So that really underlies the importance of clinical trials in a disease like MS, which initially was thought there is no treatment. The only treatment we were giving was steroids, immunosuppressant. But today in 2021, I can very, very proudly say that because of the trial, the work done by all scientists across the globe and participants, the patients who have participated in the trial, that we have now a number of therapies. So evolution of clinical trial in MS. Now, the thing is that when the trials initially came, most of the clinical trials in MS, there was no known treatment, there was no standard treatment. So the comparison of the active agent was to a placebo. But fortunately, as more and more therapies came to us, the whole paradigm of clinical trials in MS has changed. So now we have drugs which are orally active, which are very active. So when we're using a clinical trial in which we are trying a newer drug, we are comparing this drug with another drug which is also useful in multiple sclerosis, especially RRMS. So recent trials have used drugs where you have an active arm where we are testing a new drug which is now no longer compared with a placebo, but another equally effective drug. So this is the way the whole paradigm of MS trial has shifted. And that makes the trial more and more easier for us to conduct. Because now, once we have a patient in a clinical trial for MS, we can tell them that we are not giving you a placebo. We are giving you an active drug, which may be equal or even better than the drug, basically, that we are going to study. So we have to, this is a message I want to tell, that today, in 2021, the trials of MS are now much, much more safer because we are giving the patients a drug which is a standard therapy, especially for RRMS. And for so this is just a meta-analysis, and we have fortunately amongst us Dr. Kameshwarprasad, who is the champion of meta-analysis. So this was a meta-analysis which was published some time back, and they wanted to look what is the interest of patients in clinical trial? Why do they want to take part in the clinical trials? So they looked at about 11,000 patients, and these were the questions that the patients said, that why do you want to take part in a clinical trial? So the first, 89% of them said I might benefit from the treatment being studied. And second was the others will also benefit from the treatment that I'm getting studied on. And the other points were that the doctors would pay more attention. Definitely, the patients who participate in a clinical trial, the kind of care that they get is definitely unmatched. And I have tried everything, nothing is working for me. It is the only way to get access to a treatment being tested. Like some of these patients in clinical trials may not have access to the kind of treatment that we are offering in clinical trials for multiple sclerosis. And of course, there have to be other reasons that were not disclosed. So they again took patients, chronic patients who to participate in clinical trials, and they have about 21,000 patients. And they looked at patients of obstructive airway disease, hepatitis C, migraine, MS, and rheumatoid. And very interesting fact came out of this whole thing, that if you look, that there was participation in the clinical trial in this was highest in patients who were suffering from multiple sclerosis. This is a US-based study. So about 6 of all the patients, 16% patients wanted to take part in the clinical trial because of their health conditions. And a very interesting fact was that not only these patients were more interested in taking clinical trial, they were the MS patients were the most likely patients who completed the trial. If you look on the right side of the bar diagram, about 83% of them completed the trial. So it says a lot about this condition. It says that patients of MS who have a chronic condition, they're more likely to take part in the clinical trial because they're affected by this condition, and they're more likely to complete the trial. So whenever you have a clinical trial, the first question that comes to is how efficacious is it? Will it work for me or will it not? Then second is it safe for me, and whether it's going to prevent the disease progression. So whenever we're talking to patients about the MS trials, we always talk about that how well the data is, tell them about the safety, the efficacy, and how whether it's going to stop the disease or not. So you have to weigh the risk versus the benefit. And so if the patient feels in that the benefits outweigh the risk of the trial, then definitely they take part in the trial. So this is all a very, very part of the informed consent. We always tell the patient that these are the benefits you're going to have. And because now we are no longer having a placebo-controlled trial, that makes my life much, much, much easier. So as I said, advantage is no longer we have a placebo in these trials. We are getting the best of therapy. As I was talking about the recent drugs that we're going to try are something which is really that I could not imagine the kind of technology, the kind of drugs that now we are going to use in MS, and they are simply marvelous or simply outstanding the way the newer drugs for MS are coming. Because about 10 years ago when we were having, or 20 years ago, we could never think that such a drug could be available for patients of MS. And of course, you have the best of medical care, the best of doctors, and a good follow-up. That's very, very important in any clinical trial of MS. And MS being a chronic condition, a good follow-up is definitely important. The one simple question that comes always is what will happen once the trial finishes? So this is a question that plagues most of the patients of MS who have taken part in the trial previously or who are going to take the part. So I think I would just end the very important message is that so whenever I have a trial, we always request the sponsor if they can have a patient drug access program once the trial ends. So that is a very, very important point. I think that we need to emphasize here. So I will just briefly take you towards two of the protocols that I've done for MS patients. One was it's a long time back. It was an advanced study, which was for basically the PEG interferon. So now, if you look, this trial we started somewhere. Patients were taking as healthy volunteers. Then you have the study starting, and then you had the long-term, which was an advanced study. Then you had a long-term follow-up, the ATTAIN study. And then you had to auto-injector. So if you can see the whole, it took about, from the start to the clinical trials, to the drug getting approved, it almost took 5 years. And maybe another 5-10 years before to have the drug in place. So you can see in this trial, this was a trial which was conducted in 26 countries. So one important thing I want to tell all of you is that the trials that we're doing in India, these are all phase 3 trials. And these are not trials which are being done in India. They've been done all across the world, whether it was in US, Canada, or even the multiple European countries, or even South America and other countries like New Zealand. So this is not a trial which has been done in India and patients are being used as guinea pig, which is a very, very unfortunate statement and made by some very irresponsible people. These trials are there. They have been properly studied. And there is the first thing that comes in all of these trials is the safety of the patient. So a randomized, so this is another study that on MS that we have done, and this is about the safety and efficacy of ofatumumab versus teriflunomide. So this was what I was talking. The first trial that was talking was a trial of pegylated interferon where it was compared to a placebo. But in this trial, which is a more recent one, we compared ofatumumab, which is the anti-CD20 therapy, which a drug like teriflunomide. So both the groups of patients are getting the drug, whether it's the control group or the active group. So basically in this, we demonstrated, we wanted to demonstrate that ofatumumab is superior to teriflunomide. So now coming to what a typical MS trial is, that we have, in fact, in an MS trial, like most of the other trials that we would do, maybe an epilepsy trial or headache trial or a stroke trial, we only have one principal investigator and of course the whole team around it. But in MS trial, it's much more different. We have about 4 neurologists there. For any MS trial, we have 4 neurologists taking part in the clinical trial. So you can very well imagine that the patient is being looked after not by 1 neurologist, but by 4 neurologists. So you can very well say the kind of care that these patients are going to get. So you have a treating neurologist, a backup treating neurologist, an examining neurologist, and a backup examining neurologist. And then you have the treating nurse, examining technician, the study coordinator. So it's a huge group. And in addition, you need the MR technician and other people. So important thing in this trial is that you have to determine what is the intervention which you're going to take, and you have to look at the primary endpoint, which is the reduction in the annualized relapse rate, and of course, disability progression. So the point that normally we take in most of these trials is the annualized relapse rate, which is standard across all clinical trials, time to first relapse and conversion to clinically MS. So we also quantify disability by using EDSS, MSFC, or low contrast letter acuity. And we also looking at cognitive disability in progressive MS. And this is a point which has come over the last 10 years, is the use of cognitive scales like PESAC or SGMT. And of course, all of these trials, not only we look at these patients clinically, but we do MRI at regular intervals. And MRI is a surrogate marker which is being used in MS clinical trials. And basically, whenever we have these trials, we have a central team which reads all these MRI, which is NeuroRx. And so you have a simple MR reading. So you have regular MRIs. So these patients are not, whenever they're put in trials, you have regular blood tests, you have regular follow-ups, you have regular clinical follow-ups, you have telephonic visits. So you can very well imagine in a clinical trial of MS, you have 4 neurologists looking after the patient, and you have a regular follow-up. So kind of follow-up these patients of MS, the kind of care that they get is unmatched. So in addition, if you have during this, if you have a relapse, the relapse is basically adjudicated whether you have a definite relapse or not. And then the treatment for the relapse is also carried out. And so that's very important. In addition, we always look out for serious adverse event, and patient may require hospitalization or may have other problems. So these are also reported. And of course, you have the casualty assessment for every serious adverse effect that is seen. And you need to report these serious adverse effects. So whenever you have a clinical trial and you have adverse effect occurring, all these adverse effects have to be reported to your CRO and then to the sponsor. And of course, you have SUSAR, which is sudden unexpected serious adverse reaction. They again need to be reported by the sponsor to the sponsor, and sponsor reports to the regulatory authorities, ethics committee, and of course, then you have to follow it up. So to the end, the take-home message I want to give you that the need of the hour is we need a clinical trials in MS because it's a disease where we need a definite therapy. We need therapies which are not only more efficacious but more safer. And science is evolving. What was there 20 years ago has changed today. It is evolving very, very fast. So we need, with trials that we have in place for MS, we will get better therapies. And multicentric clinical trials provide our patients access to the very best medical therapies. And patients get the best of medical treatment and follow-up for a long period of time under very able supervision. Thank you for a very patient listening.
Thank you, Dr. Anshu. I think it was really a fantastic session, and I must say that our patients must have got a lot of knowledge. And even though we are seeing a lot of questions in the chat, but this was truly, truly great. And we know you. Everybody knows you actually, and the kind of contribution that you also have made as a principal investigator, it's truly commendable. So thank you so much for this talk.
Thank you, Renuka.
All right. So, Renuka ma'am, do you, before we open for the question answer session, do you want to take a pick, and do we ask everybody to switch on their videos?
Yeah, I think in today's day and age, when we are all virtual, it would be nice. I would like to tell our back-end support team to take a screen grab of the gallery view, at least of our speakers and some of our participants. The participants who don't want to show their faces on camera, and we respect your confidentiality, but we're going to take shots, and we've got lots of participants. So just give me a heads up once you're done at the back end, my team who's managing it, because it's always nice to put it out in our report that we make. Otherwise, we would have taken a photo of an audience in a hall maybe, but this is something we've just figured we could do. I can't
a couple
move.
of minutes. Everybody's just switching on their video. Just give us a couple of minutes, please.
Okay. Yeah.
Meanwhile, you can start discussing. I mean,
yeah.
keep talking.
I was about to say that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have much time, so we will try our level best to take most of the questions. But if they are not being taken, if you're not able to cater to all the questions, we will come back to you separately. Renuka ma'am is going to draft a FAQ document.
Yeah.
So there are certain questions that have come to me on personal chat, and some which are quite common and readable for all. So there's one question from Vikas. He is asking a question on how effective COVID vaccine has been there for the MS patients. Do we have any case study? Irrespective of the severity of the MS patients, can he take the vaccine? Maybe Dr. Anshul, would you like to take this?
Okay. So basically the thing is that for MS patients, we have to be a little careful when we are giving vaccine, because we need to know what kind of therapy they are on, especially because there are certain guidelines which have been issued, especially patients who are on CD20 therapies like rituximab or ocrelizumab and other therapies which are immunosuppressant. So there you have to be careful, and especially patients who are on rituximab, the guideline is that after they were given 4 months after they've received the last infusion, they can be given these COVID vaccine. For the other patients, you have to be you can give the therapy. In fact, interferons have been even tried being using in treatment of COVID, so they are very safe. We have had patients who are on both teriflunomide and dimethyl fumarate, so they have also taken the vaccine successfully. So only thing is, some of these patients who are on immunosuppressants, the antibody response may not be that good. So we have to be little careful about that, and so that is important.
Right. So he's asking another question: are there any clinical trials being conducted for MS patients, especially for myelin recreation in India?
Yeah. Actually, because there was a trial which came to India around 2016, and this is about a new. This was an anti-lingo antibody, which is basically preventing the myelin repair. But unfortunately, because of the clinical trial scenario back about 5 years ago, the scenario was really bad. The trial didn't come to India, but that trial actually has failed. This trial has failed. In fact, they have tried a number of newer therapies for remyelination, but only one of them have shown some degree of benefit in a subgroup study. So I think we are having a lot of work is going on in the remyelination field, and we will have some more newer trials coming this way. But right now, we don't have any therapy to offer for remyelination.
Right. Next question: are pharmaceutical companies allowed to do placebo-controlled double-blind clinical trials in India, or is the trial required to be a comparative one with currently available MS medications? I know, Dr. Anshu, you have already touched on this.
Yeah, I think as the landscape of MS treatment has changed, none of the ethics committees or the DCGI is going to approve a trial where we are going to have a placebo control, especially for RRMS, because for RRMS now so many treatments are available, and with the coming of the generics, the cost of treatment has gone down. So patients have a drug which they can use or affordable. So I really don't think there is any. It is not an ethical issue. It is not ethical to give a patient a placebo, especially where a drug is available. So maybe for a condition like secondary progressive MS, where you do not have any definite treatment, or even for primary progressive MS, where no treatment is available, one can use a placebo, but that too also the ethics committee does not allow more than 6 months of time.
Correct, but generally the placebos are given on top of a standard of care treatment, right? I mean,
that's okay.
Broadly,
so you can have a double play. You can have like I'll talk about the trial I was talking about, the ofatumumab trial, where we compared ofatumumab with teriflunomide. So there, because one is an injectable therapy, another is an oral therapy. So then you have a double. You can have a placebo for a different reason. So basically, masking the therapy.
Right.
Can I add something? People, even doctors, have sometimes confusion about this placebo-controlled trial. Placebo-controlled trials can be add-on trial. Add-on means there is a background standard therapy which both groups are receiving. Adding on that standard therapy, you have some investigational treatment in one arm and placebo in the other arm. So it is add-on drug and add-on placebo. That is always allowed. That is not at all. There is no ethical problem there. Everybody is receiving standard, right? So when we say placebo-controlled trials, people often start arguing that it is unethical without going into the details whether any treatment, any standard treatment is being denied to anyone. Nobody is being denied standard treatment when there is add-on placebo trials. Yes, there is ethical problem if you are not giving standard treatment to the patients in one arm, which you might call placebo-controlled arm. That is an ethical problem. That I don't think any ethics committee will allow, except that in US sometimes they allow for migraine. Now they won't allow, but for many years they allowed placebo control, saying that, well, doesn't matter, migraine is not life-threatening disease. Let's do placebo control trial, which we always criticized and keep criticizing. Even in MS, for a number of years, they allowed placebo-controlled trials, which was also questionable. But now nobody will allow placebo-controlled trials unless it is add-on placebo.
Right. Honestly, I am reading the chat simultaneously and I'm feeling so overwhelmed by the responses that have been given by the participants. People are writing that they want to volunteer to be a part of clinical trials. So this is, I think, our objective of the program is already achieved, after we are seeing these responses. So I'm truly overwhelmed. So Dr. Dennis Xavier, I would like to ask one question. Somebody has written that he is a social worker, and in what capacity he can make a difference, in terms of motivating patients, etc.
Thank you very much for that question. So hopefully you were there when I presented the slide on, what can I do? So firstly, as a patient, you can do few things that I said. If you're a caretaker, you can do a few things. And then if you're neither and you're a general social worker, getting the right information and passing it on to people, telling people that we need more clinical research to be done in our country. As I said, it's a very heterogeneous country, very different country with all kinds of situations and kinds of people as well. So can we do more research here and organize talks, organize discussions? And these days it's so easy to do it on Zoom. People don't have to even in the same city take a local train or even a bus or a taxi and go anywhere. So you can sit in the comfort of your home, even on your mobile you can listen. So please organize talks like this, number one. Number two, also be kind of like a liaison person or a liaison group between the researchers on one side and patients and patient groups on the other side, and also open up dialogues this way. So by communicating, by dialoguing, by asking questions, clarifying, you can do a great job. The third thing that you can do is get stories from patients who've already participated in trials. You saw our ISCR film. Some of those are true stories and some of them are with actors, just to get a point across. But I'm sure there are true stories. Of course, get consent from people to use their names or photographs, preferably get it in writing, and then share this in different forums. And then these days, once again, with social media, there is so much we can do. So there's a lot of work that you can do as a caring citizen, and over and above, if you're a social worker, there is so much more reach you can have. So thank you very much for that question, and there's a lot we can do. Thank you.
Renuka, can I add something on that? Can I add? This is a very good question, and thanks a lot for asking this. And I should tell you an anecdote that we were doing a community-based research. It's still going on in one urban area of Delhi. And we had to meet the Resident Welfare Association, chairman and secretary, and we had a meeting with all the members in that particular locality. So chairman, secretary, and all the members, which means residents of that area, were there. And an old lady who was actually the chairperson of that Resident Welfare Association, and she was there to motivate people to participate in the research. And she said, what she said is very important. She said, all said and done, in India, we are not enough research minded, which means neither doctors want to do so much research, nor people or the members of the society are as willing to participate in research as they are abroad. This was evident to us as we went through the whole study, though we recruited 7,505 subjects. So I shouldn't say subjects, participants, but still it was a struggle. The struggle was because in our society, people are not enough research minded. So if you are a social worker, I think if you make people research minded and they start participating in research, that will be a huge contribution. I'm not talking about only trials, but all kinds of research.
Yeah.
Great.
Right. Dr. Manish Mahajan also wanted to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Renuka. So, first of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers for the wonderful event and much needed one. Quickly, I'll put my comment across because as rightly told by Dr. Xavier and Dr. Kameshwarprasad sir, now another thing I want to add that there is something called, we can become a part, this member of the ethics committee as well, because we do have participant representatives, right, in the ethical committees of the institutions. So if you have good credentials, so social workers can move to that level that they can be part of a good institutional ethical committee where they can represent the participants as well. So that's what I want to just wanted to add on to this, their participation in the clinical trials.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manish. Dr. Dennis, do you want to little bit touch on the post-trial access? Because we have received a question that what happens when a trial ends and the medicine was definitely found to be beneficial. But, we always have that lag period of the marketed medicines to really appear in our chemist shops. So do you want to touch base on this?
Yes, it's a very good question. In fact, Dr. Anshu Rothgi briefly spoke about it, and I'll add to what he said. So thank you, Dr. Anshu, for actually touching upon this already. This is not an easy issue for patients as well as for the sponsors, right? So patients, and I'll give both views. And as I said in my talk as well, I will speak for patients too. So patients are saying, maybe I got the placebo, I didn't get any benefit at all, but your drug works. So now give me the drug. Right, and patients who got the active drug, or maybe thinking about the active drug, I got the active drug. You're suddenly asking me to stop this. What do I do? Right, and will it have adverse effects on me? And what about I contributed to science? Can you not help me to continue with this? So very fair questions, very fair concerns, and to claim that is fair, I would say. Right. So some companies, some sponsors keep aside a budget to provide post-trial access for a fixed period of time, right? But patients for lifelong conditions, what do you do, right? So that again becomes a bit of a challenge. They will say for X number of years, they will give this, and many sponsors have fulfilled their promise. I would say that. I will come on this side to the sponsors and to the trialists, and let me give you that perspective. Suppose this is, maybe it's not multiple sclerosis, maybe it's another, let's say it's hypertension. I've done studies in hypertension, and hypertension has to be treated lifelong. Let us say it's mid-40s, a person mid-40s to 50 years, and then they get this drug, and then the trial is over. The drug is proven to be good and useful. Now, for how many years can they provide this? And if there were 20,000 patients in the trial, which typically is, it becomes a problem in budgeting and considering this as well. So what they do, what sponsors do, and I've been part of some of these discussions. I mean, if you look at the budget, it's huge, and costs only keep going up, right? They say, okay, for a fixed period, we'll provide this. So in summary, it's a fair question. It's a good request. It's not an easy situation for both sides, but with dialogue and with sponsors keeping aside money for this or funds for this, it is becoming possible. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you so much, Dr. Xavier. We are almost at 6, so I don't think we will be able to really take all other questions, but Renuka ma'am will be rolling out an FAQ document. I would just like to add one last statement for the point related to really social worker. From ISCR point of view, I can say that please join us. Please join the Indian Society for Clinical Research, because you will really be able to support our own activities as well, and through you we will be able to reach out to many such patient groups and patients who are not really even, there are certain type of patients who are not into the patient groups. There is not much of awareness. We really have to do a lot of work on ground, and I think with your support, and you joining ISCR, I'm sure we'll be able to make a lot of difference. So on this note, I would like to thank you all, and I would like to now invite Renuka ma'am to do the closing remarks.
Thank you, Renuka. This is becoming like a joke. Anyway, but this is, yes, we are at a 6 o'clock mark, and like rightly Renuka said, we will gather the transcripts from these questions. They have been very, very insightful. It is just a beginning of the discussions that we have started on this very significant day. Just to sum up, I know this session has been informative. It needs a lot more, a series of probably patient education webinars like this, and we'll have to take it, little by little, so that there is not an overload of information. The responses and the questions that we have got is going to be looked at, and we are going to send it to our Medical and Scientific Advisory Committee. We are going to send it to the doctors and speakers who are here today, so that we can kind of analyze and come up with a FAQ document and put it on the resource section of MSSI, as well as the social media platforms where you can find it. We have also created, Renuka Niyogi has sent me the leaflet, which you will find as to what is the clinical trial, sort of, just at a glance, step by step. We'll put that as well. But before I end, just to sum up, we heard some very, very interesting points from all the doctors. Dr. Kameshwarprasad spoke about the evolution of clinical trial, and I had no idea how it started, and it started in the agricultural section. And of course, he told us about how he has seen the changing landscape, and from where there was love, giving tender loving care, to actually so many possible drugs. That's an interesting summary of what Dr. Kameshwarprasad said. Dr. Xavier, of course, touched upon some very, very interesting and very basic information, which was related to cost, duration, people, checks and balances that you need to have, how patients are equal partners in developing the treatment or the drug. And most importantly, what I found was very informative and enlightening is that he shared that all the information on clinical trials in India is in public domain on the CTRI website. So we will put that as well. We'll put that link for you. And what is even better for members here is that the name of the doctors, their centers or sites for trials, their contact, their email IDs and phone numbers, everything is available. So I think this is very, very empowering tool for us who are members of organizations like Multiple Sclerosis Society, as well as others who are listening to us from chronic and rare disease, to actually go on this link and see what's going on in your country for your disease. That was a brilliant takeaway for me, and I'm sure it is for the rest of you. Coming to Dr. Anshu Rohatgi, it was very, very also enlightening to see that how he feels and how a lot of us who are suffering from MS feel that the current need of the hour is to look at MS trials. However, he did mention certain things like research protocol, what were the doubts that people have, and actually the takeaway from me and on behalf of all the members that I've been hearing from separately is the fear and the doubts that keep us aside, keep us away from participating. But if we continue series and of talks like this on specific topics, I'm sure we will be able to close the information gap and empower our members to take informed decision to better their life, and also to understand aspects of drug access after the trials are over. Yeah, that's pretty much it. What I also liked, one takeaway, was that Dr. Manish Mahajan, I think, mentioned that people like us who are caregivers or people with MS can be a part of the ethics committees, can participate, can reach out. There is the Indian Society for Clinical Research, of which Renuka is representing, and all of these are empowering tools for us. And this is just the beginning of an ongoing series of discussions. So that was pretty much the summary of what I have noted. And I hope I have done justice in bringing all the relevant aspects to the group here. Please do keep watching our website, which is www.mssociety.india.org for all the information. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you who have taken time out to be a part of this webinar for the last 2 hours. I'd like to thank ICSR. I'd like to thank Dr. Kameshwarprasad, Dr. Xavier, Dr. Rohatgi, Renuka, for giving such amazing insights and information. I would like to thank all the members and the senior leadership team that is joining us from all our various chapters. I know you have a lot of questions. Maybe we could do chapter-specific series and talks. I would also like to thank all our back-end people who are working with me. We go crazy. We are going into anxiety and panic situations because we are afraid of technology will give up on us without any warning, but it's holding good. The slide that you see has got the contacts of all our chapters and the phone numbers and the emails. You can visit us, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We will be tagging ICSR on this. We will be taking the recordings and we will put it on our YouTube channel. We will share it with all of you. And with that, it's a wrap from all of us here at MSSI. Thank you once again, everyone. Namaste. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.